Grady, and today I'll be presenting to you my field research media presentation. So the overview of this presentation is conduct the purpose, the participants, the procedures, the findings, and the discussion. The purpose of the interview was learning from a perspective from former students what aspects I should focus on when becoming a future educator, to well as gain an understanding methods and techniques I can apply in my own classroom to build a future of practice and understanding individuals so I can become experienced in creating a comfortable and diverse classroom for all. Here I will be sharing the three of my participants. My first one was Pierce. He's a former college student who has autism. I know Pierce through high school. My second participant was Justin. He's a former high school student who has hemiparesis cerebral palsy. I know Justin through work. And my third participant is Jamaro, who is 23. He has Asperger's syndrome, which is a type of autism, and I know Jamaro through work as well. Conducting my interviews, I did get permission from each of my participants' families to conduct in these interviews and share their names, personal stories, and challenges that they went through. Each of my participants, I did get permission before conducting each of their interviews. Here were the questions that I used throughout my three interviews. I did use the same questions, asking about their highlights, their challenges, some ways that they can encourage students, parents, educationers to be involved in the special education program, advice for future practitioners, and their familiarity with special education. For my first participant is Pierce. He has autism and is in his third year of college studying to become a vet tech assistant. When I first met Pierce, he was a senior in high school and I was a sophomore, and we were both in the Best Buddies program. Some highlights that Pierce shared with me is that he played bowling all throughout his 4 years of high school. He also was a part of the Best Buddies program all 4 years as well. When I had first met Pierce, it was during COVID, so it was virtual online participating in the Best Buddies gym program. Pierce loved being in the Best Buddies program. He loved to interact with his classmates and tell them stories about his bowling competitions, as well as how he would participate in circus. He would dress up as a clown and participate in circus acts as well, which was very cool. And his best experience during his time in school would being able to go to prom, even though it was during COVID, he was still being able to experience prom. Some challenges that Pierce has shared with me, along with having autism, he does have a heart condition called cardiomyopathy. He has a heart monitor, which avoids the risk of heart attacks and heart failures. During this time, it was a big struggle for Pierce because he was unable to attend in person school during the time of COVID because it was a risk of health issues. He was very frustrated when he had found out this news because Pierce had loved being in school, being able to interact with his teachers and peers. And since he was unable to attend school in person, the only way he would be able to participate with his peers was through virtual Zoom as well as texting them. And if nobody responded right away to Pierce, he got very frustrated and was annoyed very easily. Despite those challenges, Pierce had a overall great experience during high school. Even having autism, it never really stopped Pierce from being such an amazing person. He always wanted to involve himself in sports, activities, staying in touch with his peers, being able to explain his personal challenges and highlights with his classmates and teachers throughout his entire 4 years. Within that, I asked him what advice he would give me as a future practitioner. Pierce has stated it is always good to check up on your students because you never know what they might be going through. He loves when his teachers would tell him to share information about himself so his peers would get to know him more. He wants to always assure that there's always hope in the world for room and improvement, if not already there. My second participant was Justin, who has hemiparesis cerebral palsy. This affects one side of the body, causing weakness. He is a senior in high school. Some of the highlights that Justin shared with me is he works at the movie theater Fridays and Saturdays. He is one of our cart cleaners. He cleans all the theaters. His favorite part about working at the movie theater is he actually gets catch a glimpse 10 minutes before the movie ends. So he'll just sit in there, watch the movies, and it gives him time between each movie set to rest his body. With having cerebral palsy, one side of his arm causes a lot of weakness, so he's unable to use his other arm because it's not functioning as well as the first one, as his other arm, I should say. He does feel numbness throughout the day, which is pretty normal for him. Some challenges that Justin had shared with me: outside of work, he's unable to drive due to only one functioning arm. It is pretty frustrating for him because being 17, he wants to be able to drive around and hang out with his friends. But unfortunately, he is unable to drive, so his mom has to take him to school and to work, and also if he wants to hang out with friends. He shared with me that it's not that he can't drive, it's just his body has a hard time functioning. His nerves with one arm obtain a lot of pressure on his left that can actually function properly. Despite those challenges, Justin had also told me some advice to familiarize myself with different disabilities and understand how they can be effective to students. Coming into this interview, I knew a little bit about cerebral palsy due to the information that was presented in class, but I never knew that there were different types of cerebral palsy. So being able to understand the cerebral palsy that affects Justin was new information that I had written down so that I can conduct that when I become a teacher and to understand my students better. My last participant was Jamaro. Jamaro is 23. He has Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism. This one isn't very common, but he was diagnosed with it at a very young age. One of the highlights that Jamaro had told me was even working at the movie theater, he usually helps out in the kitchen. His job is to portion the sauces as well as help clean the dinners. Jamaro usually stands near the ice machine in his own little corner, which he loves to stand near. He gets a lot done. He is the fastest worker in the movie theater. He loves to be able to see the food runners and the servers throughout the day. He loves to smile at everybody, even if he doesn't give a direct communication. He just loves to interact with people through his facial expressions. One of the biggest highlights that Jamar wanted me to share was he loves going on break and treating himself to a nice cold ice cream sundae and a cold root beer. Some challenges that Jamar does face is being able to not make conversations very well. It's very challenging because he doesn't understand when people are talking to him on a certain level of how we may talk to other peers. When Jamaro feels like he isn't able to engage in a proper conversation, he tends to get very quiet, will stop talking, and likes to isolate himself into his own world. Unfortunately, with Jamaro as well, he's unable to drive because his syndrome also gives him seizures. With this, he was actually taken out of school at the age of 15. His parents were very concerned about his health conditions and didn't want them to get worse, so they had taken him out of school so that he could have a full time nurse to watch his seizures. Over time, his seizures did get better, so he was able to work, which he absolutely loves doing. So, despite some challenges that he may face, he also had a positive that came out through it. Some advice that Jamaro had given me was to recognize that autism is a spectrum and that everyone is unique in their own ways. He also shared with me to make sure to always be clear and direct in language. Don't use confusing language. Those who have autism have a hard time understanding certain languages that we may speak. So, understanding in their own perspective is a good way for us to conduct a good conversation with them. With Amaro, he does get overstimulated during conversations if he's unsure. So, that's when he starts to become quiet. Within my 3 interviews, I was able to conduct a great understanding of different types of disabilities that affect people, that have affect former students in classrooms and outside of classrooms. It was nice to be able to experience these types of situations that I can inform myself and to better educate myself going forward as a future practitioner, as well as being able to use these advices and methods in my own classroom for my students.